welcome back to BHookedCrochet.com. I'm your host Brittany, and in this episode I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet the yarn stash basket. This is a free pattern that's available at BHookedCrochet.com. You can get the link to that pattern in the description below. To complete your stash basket, you're going to need approximately 264 yards of t-shirt yarn, a size 9mm crochet hook, a large darning needle, and a pair of scissors. We're going to be working our stash baskets bottom up. So we're going to start out by making an oversized solid granny square for the base. We're going to do that by making a slip knot, and then go ahead and chain 3. Now we need to form the center of our square, and we're going to do that by joining with a slip stitch to the very first chain. So that was our third, second, and our first right there next to the slip knot. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and through. Now you want to find the opening of that ring by just pulling it open, and I usually just stick my finger inside there so I know where to work. We're going to begin round 1 by chaining 5. And so 3 of those chains are acting as a double crochet. Then we're adding an additional 2, and that's going to act as our turning chain to make the corner. Now we can go ahead and make 3 double crochets into the center of our ring. Now we'll form the corner by making 2 chains. Now we can go ahead and work 3 double crochets in the center, Now we're going to have to put a little muscle behind this project. Whenever you're working with t-shirt yarn, you do have to put a little bit of effort behind it. So if you're having trouble getting all of your stitches in the ring, just sort of do what I just did and sort of pull them and slide them down. So that creates the second side. Now we'll make 2 chains to form the third corner, and then 3 more double crochets in the center. That will form the third side of our square. Now make 2 more chains. That's going to form the final corner. And now since our chaining of 3, or well the 5 chains that we did at the beginning, since 3 of those counted as a double crochet, we only need 2 more to complete the last side. Now the last part for round 1, we want to join with a slip stitch to the third chain. And you may have to move your work around your stitches there to see the first chain, second, and third. So we're going to join there with a slip stitch. Now to move on to round 2, we're going to start again by chaining 5. We're going to do this for every round, so get used to that part of it. Then we're going to work 2 double crochets into the chain space there. Then we'll make a double crochet into each of these 3 stitches from the round below. And once you've reached the next corner, just make 2 double crochets and then 2 chains and then 2 more double crochets, all in that same space. Now we just need to simply repeat that sequence until we've reached the end of our round. So when you've made it to your final side, you've made your double crochets into that corner, I wanted to clarify what we're supposed to do with this final side, because this can get a little bit confusing if you're not familiar with these chains and what they're supposed to be. So I've made my 2 there. I want to make a double crochet. I still need 1 in each of these 3 double crochets, including this chain. Okay, so let's do the easy ones first. We have the first one right there. And then the second one is quite easy to see. So in order for us to conceal this chain and make our granny square look the best that it possibly can, we have to get a little creative. So we're going to place our 3rd double crochet right here in this space where that chain is coming from. Now we wouldn't normally do this because the chain where it sits is acting as a double crochet and it would be coming from that spot. But we need to have an additional 2 double crochets in this corner over here to complete the square. So we're allowing that chain 3 to act as one of these double crochets from the corner. So now all we have to do is add a final double crochet into the chain space, but it's not this chain space here. We want to go down here into this space. Now we would join with a slip stitch to that 3rd chain, and you can push your stitch over so you can count. I know this happens to be the 3rd chain, and I'm joining with a slip stitch. And doing that maintains our stitch count on the sides. It also makes our increases neater, and it keeps our chains hidden within the corners. Round 3 is going to be exactly the same as round 2. The only difference is that we're going to have more stitches. So we want to start off by chaining 5. And make 2 double crochets into your first corner. And then make 1 double crochet into all of the stitches there on this next side. And this is our repeat, so we just want to work our corners the same, where we have 2 double crochets, 2 chains, 2 double crochets, and then just 1 in each of the stitches that are along the sides. So at the end of round 3, your square will look something like this. And I'm just adding my final double crochet. And then we'll end by slip stitching into the 3rd chain. Now round 4 is going to be exactly the same. So we're just going to start by chaining 5. Start with your 2 double crochets in the corner and make one double crochet into each of the stitches on all of the sides. In the corners, you'll want to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Okay, so this is all just a repeat of what we've already covered. So go ahead and finish up round 4, and then we'll come back and get started on the next round. So here's what your work will look like at the end of round 4, and you're probably getting the hang of this by now. So what we need to do to continue on the base of our basket is work on rows or rounds 5 and round 6. Do that exactly the same as we have been doing. So go ahead and complete those 2 rounds, come back to this video, and we'll talk about what to do next. Now that we're at the end of round 6, your work should look something like this, and mine measures approximately 11 inches across, so it's an 11 by 11 inch square at this point. The next thing we need to do is start working on the sides. We're no longer going to be increasing, and we're going to use this side as the bottom of the basket. So this is going to be what we would call the right side. So as you're crocheting in this direction, these are the stitches that are facing you. So we want to put this on the bottom. So all we want to do to start off round 7 is just turn it upside down so that we have the underneath facing upward. To begin round 7, we want to chain 3. That's going to act as our first double crochet. In this round, since we're working on the sides, we're going to stop increasing, and that way the sides will, instead of going out in this direction, they will continue to go up. So for this round only, on round 7, we're going to be working in the front loop only of our stitches. So if we face our work this way, you see the V there, we're just going to be working in the front loop. So that right there, that's going to create a little ridge. So this back loop is going to be left out in the open, and it's going to create a little edge, and that's going to sort of define where the bottom stops and the sides start. So this is a technique that I like to use whenever I'm working with baskets or booties or slippers, anything like that. And so what we're going to do for this round is we're just going to make 1 double crochet into the front loop only of all of the stitches. When you come to the corner, this is where we're not going to be increasing anymore. So the whole reason why these rounds grow in the flat part is because we're increasing by putting 2 stitches for each side of the corners. That's what's going to increase it out. So we're going to change that up in order to keep our basket to be square, but also to not increase. So to do that, we just want to make 2 double crochets in this chain 2 space. And you don't have to worry about the front loop or the back loop only. Just go ahead and work your double crochets around the chain. Then once you've finished up that corner, just go ahead and start working your double crochets again in the front loop. And this is our pattern repeat for round 7. So go ahead and finish up round 7. We'll come back and we'll talk about what to do next. Once you've made it all the way around for round 7, the last thing we want to do is make 1 double crochet into this chain 2 space. So this is the chain 3 where we began. I said before that that counted as a double crochet, and since we've just been putting 2 double crochets in each of the corners, we just want to maintain that pattern. So finish off by putting a double crochet in that space, and now find your 3rd chain and join with a slip stitch. And that's going to finish off round 7. So I mentioned before about that back loop creating the ridge. So this is what you should see if you had been putting your stitches in the correct place. It should be a little line, and that's right where the point is, where it forms the sides. Now at first it's not going to be straight, but you want to see the general shape. Like in this corner, you want to see that it's pulling up. And it might be a little wavy. You can see here mine's a little bit wavy, and that's normal. Things will straighten out as we add more rounds to this pattern. So to move on with our stash basket, the next thing that we want to do is just create 3 more rounds where we don't increase, we just put 1 double crochet in each of the stitches. So we'll go through a few of those stitches here. So we're going to be working rounds 8, 9, and 10 the same way. Okay, so we start with the chain 3, and that is going to count as a double crochet. And this time we're going to work in the entire stitch. We're not going to work in the front loop, but both of those loops. And once you get to the corners, you'll treat them just the same. Just make 1 double crochet into each of the stitches. So each of the 2 stitches that we made for the corner. Okay, so this part is really simple. When you get to the end of each of the rounds, you're just going to slip stitch into that 3rd chain, just like we did in the previous round. So at this point, go ahead and work rounds 8, 9, and 10, just like we're doing. 1 double crochet into each stitch and joining each round with a slip stitch in the 3rd chain. When you've completed that, come back to the video and we'll work on the next section, which is where we're going to be transitioning to a new color. So off camera, I went ahead and finished my double crochet rounds. So I have a total of 4 from where we started working on our sides. And you should have a pretty good curl on each of your corners. Now, as I mentioned before, it's not really going to sit straight up at this point now. It's going to kind of just lay over gently, and that's okay. Now what we're ready to do now is bind on our 2nd color, and I have left it so that I have my slip stitch there on that 10th round, and then we just want to bind off. So one thing you may have mentioned if you've been crocheting for a while is you notice I did things a little bit backwards from what you normally do on crocheting rounds. And that was that I left what's considered the wrong side of the double crochet be on the outside of the basket. And I actually did that on purpose because for the purpose of this stash basket, the different texture that you see from the back side of the double crochet versus the front side, I think works really well in contrast with the color change as well as the texture in the pattern. So from here on out though, we want our front side of the double crochets to be on the outside. So whereas before we were working in this direction with basically the inside of the bag facing us, or the basket, we're going to turn things around and crochet in this direction so that the front of our stitches appear on the outside of the basket. And so go ahead and grab your second color. I'll be using white. And create your slip knot and leave yourself a tail long enough to weave in later on. So to keep things consistent, I'm going to bind on where we did our bind off. And so I'm just going to insert my hook into that stitch. Pull through, and we're going to continue working with double crochet stitches. So let's chain up 3. Okay. Now from here on out, the pattern is the same as what we were doing with the previous 3 rounds. We just want to make 1 double crochet into each of the stitches, and we're going to use both of the loops. There. Now after you've put a couple of double crochet stitches, you can kind of see the difference in the texture and the way the front of the stitch looks versus the back of the stitch. So since the rest of the pattern is the same, what we want to accomplish here is we're going to have a total of 8 rounds of this new color, this white color for me, your second color, whichever you're using. And we're just going to work it in the same way. So make 1 double crochet into each stitch, join with a slip stitch to that first chain, that third chain there, at the end of every round. Work that until you have 8 rounds, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how to finish off our stash baskets. Once you've made it to your 5th round, if you're using the same t-shirt yarn as me, the Crafty by Premier Yarns, you're not going to have enough t-shirt yarn for your 6th round all the way through. So I'm quickly going to demonstrate the color transition back to our first color, so red in my case. Now all I'm going to do is just bind off like we did before. Now we'll just create a slip knot with our first color. And then we'll bind on in the same place that we did our bind off. This way we're keeping things consistent. Now once we have our bind on of our new color, we're just going to finish those last 3 rounds using our second color. We're going to be working this the same way, 1 double crochet into every stitch and then joining with a slip stitch to that third chain. So once you have finished working your 8 rounds of double crochet, 5 of which are your second color, the last 3 are your first color, then we're completely finished with our stash baskets. All that's left to do is to bind off. We'll do that by trimming our working yarn and pulling that through the loop on our hook. Now all that you have to do is weave in your ends and we're completely finished with our baskets. This wraps up our tutorial today on the stash basket. Again, the written pattern is available at BHookedCrochet.com/stash basket. Until next time, stay tuned at BHookedCrochet.com for more free patterns and video tutorials.